Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on this evening. I'm thrilled that I'm here with Ali. We're in Crescent Head at the moment in the most... I just adore Crescent Head. It's so beautiful, and I'm so thrilled you've moved here. Ali is a holistic educator, a yogi twice trained, an environmentalist in terms of her waste warriorship with the oceans, who are in Newcastle, and worked in education for over 20 years. I think in my blurb previously I had said 15 years, but we're actually older than that, sadly. So it's actually 20 years in Australia, but also in Brazil and Central America. So Ali, for the last sort of 7-8 years, has worked at Linwell, Steiner School in East Maitland, but recently has come up here to Crescent, and is still in an education capacity, but also delving out into some of her other passions and expertise in wellness. But the reason for today is to pick your brain, Ali, about oral storytelling and the beauty of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Allowing me to pick your brain and to share that with the people this evening. So I guess my first question for you is, you obviously have a passion for storytelling, which I found out about 7-8 years ago, but what has your journey been with storytelling through your life that brought you to sharing it with children?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to invite me to your platform, and we can talk about one of my favorite things, my passions, and it's an honor to contribute to your wonderful work.
Thank you.
Which is so important, nutrition. And storytelling, I believe, is a nutrition for the soul.
How's that? Let's just trademark that.
Yeah. You know, a good story, it's you just dream about. I don't know. I dream about it, you know. And
it stays with you, doesn't it?
Yeah, and even a child telling a story about the day. But so I believe I grew up listening to the stories with my own family. You know, so during summer or winter, we used to go to my grandmother's siblings' farm, and I remember being the only child sitting in the kitchen around the stove, which was the fire, and drinking tea after dinner, and they were telling terrific stories. I don't remember as well all these stories, but I do remember a few of them.
It's the feeling, though.
Yeah, and I remember they referring to me like, "Are you still awake? Listening to the stories?" You know, and probably it was really late, but it was so. The atmosphere was so warm because the fire, but also they were, you know, looking after me and integrating me in that environment. And yeah, I think, but along my whole journey, so when I was doing university, then it came like a project that you have to do your thesis, and I was teaching year 1 in that time.
In mainstream?
In mainstream, yeah. Public schools in Brazil. And I started teaching really young. So I found out that maybe the fragmented system that was coming into parts in terms of how, you know, coming from a word rather than a context. And for me, finding that a few educational systems were using storytelling to invite that approach to bring a more amplified the vocabulary for the child, and the repetition, the routine. And this is like opening a whole door and a window for a child to bring the imagination. So it is learning through stories, and then bring that stories into the classroom. This is after 7 years old, not the early years.
Yeah.
But and then at the same time, parallel to that, I came across this wonderful psychologist, and she had a group of storytellers. And I could not believe it there exist. You know, I was 22, perhaps 21. And I was invited to be part of this storytelling group with they all over 40s, and they really embraced me into that group.
So you mentioned she's a psychologist. So did she just have this group because she was passionate about it, or did she use story within her own practice?
Yes, as a therapeutic approach to help children to heal trauma and help them to really, reveal the individuality through the sessions with her.
Yeah.
So she in a more holistic approach, I say.
Yeah.
That way. And her name is Marta. And I still...
Thank you, Marta.
Yeah, thank you, Marta. And they, like, when you used to tell a story, so that's one of the traditions, I say. You have to wear a hat when you tell a story, because it comes across from the joke that goes to the palaces and all in the story.
I think that's so amazing that those little traditions then get passed along.
And then I came across a skirt, which I should brought here to me, but I can show on Instagram.
Did you used to wear that in Newcastle?
So I create this skirt, and one of my friends, Marty, she hand painted and put pockets so I could in the middle. But this is more for older children as well, because I wasn't working with the early years yet.
Yes.
But then it was a beautiful journey to just understand how to get it into that level of, you can bring different stories each day for a child that's perhaps learning how to read and write.
Yeah.
Because and then emphasizes the challenge. But just to finish how the chronology of how the storytelling came to my life, and then so I started to bring into my beautiful children, in just one long story that will last 3 weeks, but every day you tell a little bit more. So it brings that respect of the child has to learn how to wait.
Patience.
The answers, I wonder, let's wait for...
Until next time.
Until next time.
The next episode.
A story, rather be sour, rather be sweet. Take what you wish and let the rest come back to me. You're going to
have to write that down for me. That is so cute.
So then years go by, and then I find the Steiner teacher training, where one of my gurus, my mentor, Ana Cairelo, she was working in the same school, Steiner school in the south of Brazil, and she became my mama and my very good friend. So we used to just to do some soft craft, and she used to tell stories. That was actually some classes that I was taking with her because I wanted to learn soft craft, but and then storytelling was, rather than be gossiping about things, we will be focusing in stories, which was amazing.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And everyone have that homework to bring a story to tell into the group, which it was again another storytelling group. And during my training, that was again having that adult nourishment, but also the theory aspect of why is important. And when we think about the storytelling, you think about head, hands, and heart. So those three aspects, that is like
so that's a very sort of Steiner, I mean, it's in mind, body, spirit, and many different kinds of things.
Yeah.
But I know in Steiner education, there's a really big part in the way that they educate, but then in oral storytelling as well.
Yes.
That is part of it.
Yeah, because you work as you can't go too speedy when you're telling a story. You create anxiety into the group.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be calm and pass that to the children that are listening to it, but also you connect it with that. I keep going.
I know it's hard. You're like, I'm gonna go this tangent.
Yeah, but it will all make a sense. It's like making a quilt.
Yeah.
You know.
So you came across that with your educator, and then you started to delve into Steiner education, which sort of enriched your understanding from that perspective, because obviously stories are told in many different cultures and education mediums, but that's then when you delved even further into that style for the early years specifically.
And then you, of course, like when you work with children, so that basically was like there was the understanding of why you have to have a certain preparation to bring storytelling for the child. And of course, I do value reading from a book.
Okay, so that's a really interesting. So I asked that specific question. So what is the difference? Do you feel the difference? Because obviously, I mean, I have read books. I love children's storybooks. I adore it. But I had a really interesting situation for me when I read a storybook with a group of children in at a shopping centre randomly, and then I did some oral storytelling, and I had about 3 children for the book. And then I did the oral storytelling, like 3 Little Pigs. It was a story about 3 little pigs. And then I had 25 children there. So what do you feel is, there's obvious differences between them, but how do you see the differences between reading a story versus oral storytelling? And why is there, I know in the early years in Steiner, there's a real emphasis on oral storytelling. So can you tell us why perhaps they use that in the early years? I mean, they still read books. I know at Jimmy's they do read books, but there is this real rhythm with that. So what's that difference and why?
Well, for me, because I have the experience, to reading a book. When you're reading a book, so you're holding the book to read, and usually you have the children in front of you, right? So when you have the book, because you're reading, and then you are looking the pictures, and then you are interrupted most of the time, except if you are reading to your own children and you are able to have them up behind
so your
you.
Relationship with the child is interrupted.
Yeah, so it's kind of a barrier. You're having this in front of you, and the child is curious to know what are the images that are coming, and so you have to say, oh, just a moment. So it breaks the story. So one of the suggestions I do, like if there's a favorite book in your house and perhaps you want to adventure yourself to do such a thing. So maybe you get the story, write down and memorize by heart. This story. It doesn't have to be exactly the same words in that, but children will know the words that are on the book.
They already
know
the words. So, their favorite ones.
So then you can bring through the storytelling, but then again you can use objects that you have it in the house and things like that. Whatever that makes the image, or but it also you prepare the atmosphere, and when you are telling the story, it could be even just in an event, or it could be in your classroom, it could be on the birthday party, it could be on the picnic. You prepare the atmosphere. That's and sometimes it can be a bit tricky if you're telling outside, because you're competing with all the elements, the natural elements in there. So I would really prefer to tell a story indoor, because it brings that preparation of you coming into that activity, which is an experience. So you perhaps you're gonna make a place where children can sit.
So just to quickly butt in, so in your time in early education in the classroom, you would have like an oral story, a kompok oral story every day, or what? How would you kind of use it in the routine and rhythm of the day? Because we're talking about coming inside, and I think that what would be that rhythm in the day?
Yeah, if you bring it to the to a school setting, then it depends again. Like some people would like to start the day telling a story, because it helps. It depends the dynamic of the group as well. So if they have a long play before they coming into the classroom, rather than you do a morning circle, which you bring more movement and more agitation, perhaps you bring a storytelling to begin your day. I personally like to finish the day with the storytelling, because we have many aspects through the day, and you're gonna end the day with the storytelling. So the children will take that dreamy fantasy imagination aspects back home with her, and it brings also a sense of safety and warmth, because and also parents will come to pick up the child, and they will meet a child that has been nourished through the story, and it's whatever they, and then sometimes it can happen like social challenges for that child, and the story, it can be a wonderful experience that has many therapeutic aspects for the child. It's like, and I'm not saying that it's only for children that have special needs or children that have some challenges through be sitting down. So this is another aspect. Let's say, but I can't, so frustrating to tell a story for a child that they cannot sit still. Perhaps for that's another probably webinar.
That's another webinar, sitting still at the table or
just to give a little bit of a drawing, so you can have, let's say, a little rock or something that child would like to sit, or maybe that child will come, let's say, I don't know, maybe I think you had a question in towards that. So to bring a story, I usually light a candle, and usually we'll have, so this is just an example. I normally use beeswax candles, and some people, but it's dangerous working with the fire. It's dangerous if you tell the children that's dangerous. Of course, you need to have a safety.
But you've got it in a vessel as well, and
but also it helps the child to be aware that it's not time for play. It's time to listen.
It's a transition.
And if they're not ready, and then they might not be ready, and they have to accept it and really, have a. I noticed that adults sometimes are afraid of the children's reaction. You are the adult. You want to be warm and bring the child in, but I normally have a list, and that child will be able to maybe blow, the match. So I have a little song that's part of bringing in the story. So if this is a food for the soul, and then what do we need to do before we eat? We need to wash our hands. And then we need to drink some water to feel good. We played outside all this time. We need to take our shoes off. We need to make nice and comfortable space for the child to be invited for that atmosphere. So there is already, how long that takes don't expect that it will be only 15 minutes of storytelling. It will be half an hour.
Yeah, the preparation, like as a preparation for the meal, you have preparation for the time, respect for the meal or the space or the group time.
Yes, exactly.
The story.
So very important, even at home, like at the moment, many parents are at home with their children. And you have to, so there is other aspects. You perhaps not going to choose a very long story for the little ones because they're not going to be with attention over 10 minutes. And then it's going to be very frustrating.
For everybody.
Yeah. So
you often light the candle. It's nice sort of transition time.
And if you don't know any song, you can just hum.
I'm going to bring up the candle because we can't see it.
But if you know a song, like a Portuguese song, Fada da chaminha, vem para mim, vem uma chaminha gostosa de se ver. And then we can watch the fire, you know, quietly. And once the light is lit, there is no more talk. It's quietness. Shh. So, and then perhaps you can play, you know, with.
Yeah, it's mesmerizing, isn't it? It signals the transition. I feel like
it really brings the awareness, the attention, and the sitting is still, and then someone. This is just an example. You could have another ring bell, and then you choose a child, and if you are telling at home, you can have a helper. You know, tonight, if you have more than one child, like tonight is your turn, and perhaps, you know, you're gonna be for 2 nights, and the other sibling have to wait 2 nights to have a turn. And that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay to wait.
Yeah.
That's life.
And then...
Oh, it's so beautiful.
And then maybe you play again, you know, and then brings in... The child has the responsibility of look after. And if the child is not ready to hold it, then maybe I will hold it in.
I'm just loving that a lot of these kind of little rituals before the storytelling are so you can see the parallel in mealtime as well, you know, in setting the table, in lighting the candle, in washing your hands. Obviously, maybe you say a grace or a gratitude prayer or whatever. It's just creating that space to get ready for this special time. And I'm loving these parallels.
Yeah, and also like one of the things, I just can leave that down. And brings that enlightenment actually for you is not having anything to do with any religion aspect. It's
No.
Lighting a candle is so
beautiful,
beautiful,
and warm.
And so you have that candle lit through the story, and then you perhaps can have a finger play.
So in terms of, then talking about things like finger play and resource and things, obviously you guys have seen my little story dolls, which I was taught by this lovely lady, Carlos. Ali's got some, but you also use other different things. Can you give some examples? Because sometimes people say, oh, like the dolls are so beautiful. You don't have to use dolls. So can you say like the different things that you might use in telling a story?
I think the Billy Goat's graph, I'm just going to have a sip of water.
Simone, love the prepare to listen cues. The candle is a super idea. Yes, so Simone is a feeding specialist. She's a nutritionist, but also studying her Masters of Occupational Therapy. So I know Simone often talks about the sort of cues with feeding and things like that to be able to transition a child, or if you have difficulty in transitioning a child to mealtime, the importance of that. So I can understand why Simone is loving these cues as well. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
So back to what you'd use in the stories.
So yeah, and also like for the storytelling, I think you of course you can be aware of what season of we are living, and then we bring stories. So what do you think the Billy Goat's graph, which season they will be more appropriate to bring? So
to tell the story. Yeah.
So what they doing on the story? They eating grass. Where
when is grass?
Which time of the year the grass is lovely to eat? Yeah. You know, like probably the cows eat it all year round.
But maybe like spring with the greenness and the fresh green grass.
Yeah, and then so I actually made the Billy Goat's graph ages ago when I was teaching at preschool. But you know, if you don't have it, if you want to just create, you could have a 3 rocks or 3 stones. And at the moment I got a 3 Banksias. And that's the big Billy Goat graph. That's the middle Billy Goat graph. And that's the little Billy Goat graph.
Can I just pause you for 1 second? Because one thing we were talking about before we started the webinar, you talked about one of the things, the differences between a storybook telling versus oral storytelling was the ability, because the picture that's in front of them with a storybook is so specific, whereas when you're telling the oral story, perhaps especially if you're using something like a natural object, is the ability then for the child to have sort of this open imagination that they can actually imagine maybe what they look like rather than the picture telling them what they look like. So the oral storytelling and having that is sort of to evoke the imagination of the child more, do you think?
Yes, and also brings that element of open-ended activity, because once the child sees the natural element, perhaps during play with their friends, they will play.
Imitate it.
And imitate, yeah.
So then that comes back to that head, heart and hand kind of
imitation
philosophy.
Yeah. Child and that's my troll, which is you know, you make and then like, okay, so I can have all the Billy Goat's graph in my leg here, let's say. That's the mountain, they eating the grass. The troll lives here, and that's the bridge, which I can use my arms, or I can have the child arm. Or can you have your arm, please, so I can have the bridge here?
Yes, Annie.
And then, you know, the Billy Goat's graph, and then the troll comes, who is trotting on top of my bridge? You know, so that's coming all the way, and then perhaps go into the child.
Just like a 3-year-old.
So you see difference, like perhaps if you're reading a story, you're watching the images, which is
still beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I know. I love storybooks.
But it's just a different connection and a different element. And they, perhaps tomorrow it could be rocks, or perhaps it can be even using
just your fingers. So with that as well, just to extend out to, because I know sometimes people ask myself with like a story doll thing, it kind of parallels a bit here with the open-ended kind of imagination. What's the reason with sometimes the story dolls for not having, like in Steiner, like the face that they use? So is that also about kind of imagination of the face, or what's that real background behind that?
Yes, you're correct. I think it's also is like a canvas, you know, and one of the beauty things, like the dolls I made here, like I did the eyes. This is Lenny, by the way. Say hello to Lenny.
Hi, Lenny.
He surfs and he goes fishing, and he loves to walk by the headland.
Is this an old jumper of yours? I think I remember that jumper.
So it just not Marley's actually, my daughter. Yeah, and that's all. How I say, little pieces of scraps of linen and jeans and all the other things, but
so he has little eyes, but he doesn't necessarily have a mouth or an expression.
No, because doll in Steiner education, but not only in the Steiner education, there's many of the South American cultures.
Yeah, like little worry dolls and things like
worry
that.
Dolls and there is the Andinas dolls, I think, as well, which is sometimes it's just a rock wrapped in fabrics. And I know many children that have hold a rock, a heavy rock, as the doll, and they were really like, that's my baby, you know. They put life into it, and then some children feel scared because the doll doesn't have any face, and some children say, I have it without me saying anything. The other child has answered and said, oh, but sometimes they can be sleeping. it's not like a traditional plastic doll where the eyes blink, but and then it doesn't work anymore, and then the eye will be closed. Sorry, but
Mama, like they're so freaky.
but it's kind of like it breaks, and then if he is a with natural materials where you can make yourself, it doesn't have to be pretty.
No, yeah.
It has to be cuddly, warm, and
Inviting,
that's the
yeah.
main aspect, I think. But one of the things, like, this is a very big size story doll.
He is ginormous.
But because the intention of this story doll is actually for the early years, is for them to be able to play, and it's quite heavy if you grab it.
For him to stand there, but then for him to stand
but
there.
also it weighs like a baby.
Hi, Lenny, my little fisherman.
And I'll bring Zali here too. Zali is a farmer.
Sally.
She loves it. The hair is a bit wobbly because she likes to dance and she gardens a lot, and she got a beautiful hair.
She does. I love her hairstyle here.
But also, again, Zali is even heavier than Lenny, but they need to stand without fall because it's to represent the human figure. And sometimes we are sad, sometimes we are happy, sometimes we're sleeping.
Yeah.
So that's the main reason. And I don't have a problem, but if you do have, like, you can make a little nose. And
so with your stories as well, so obviously you do some with people, but some with animals and some with inanimate objects and things like that. So with a story, we were just talking about, so obviously you use story for different things. It's the repetition of the story for vocabulary and learning of communication, of patience. But what are some of the other reasons why you would tell a story? Obviously therapeutic, you touched on that, but what are some other reasons in like an early years, not necessarily in education, but just even at home, like to tell the story? Do you like sort of, is it like lessons or moral lessons or,
I don't know. I don't usually, personally, I don't really work with morals. But I feel I don't use much the fairy tales. I like to create my own stories. And sometimes I like to tell my own stories, like my life stories.
Yes.
When I was a little girl, this is what happened. But also there is a few things that you can research when you're telling your story. Perhaps you start and finish with like there was once, or there was last week. You can kind of play, because and then the child is gonna be, you want the child to wonder and have questions for you.
So one of the purposes of a story is for them to have questions.
Yeah, and you're
evoking thought in their mind.
Going back to that aspect of repetition and rhythm, you can. So you repeat the story, like in the early years. Personally, in my classroom, and I know many schools also do that. You repeat the story for 3 whole weeks. The same story. Again, especially when they are on the 5-year-olds, they start to roll their eyes and again. But and then is your opportunity, and it will last 3 seconds. They love it. They just fell in love. Let's say when they watch TV, they watch the same show over and over again. When you read a book to go to bed, it's over and over again. When you sing a song, it's over and over again. The routine and the repetition is boring for the adult.
And I think this is something we need to learn with food. We get bored of the spaghetti bolognese, but they love it.
Exactly. But and then you can put a salt and pepper in that story. Especially for those children, they already think they know the story.
So it's the same story, but you can add like little elements.
And you can change the name of one person, or you can kind of
Add
and they will
an
correct you. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry, and have a little bit of humor bringing into the story.
So the repetition's important, obviously, because you're teaching them about repetition, but also then the patience of waiting a little bit as well.
Patience, because I don't know, storytelling for me is like, do you brush your teeth every day? You have a shower every day. So, and then why don't you have a story every day at the same time and repeat for 3 whole weeks? Because, and then the story is kind of wrap everything else that you're working towards, what's happening around and surround you.
So that's why it's maybe seasonal or
Yes.
whatever, because it's what's happening
And
at that
again,
time.
first week maybe it's gonna work in the head. The second week is gonna work in the heart, and the third week is gonna work in the hands.
Yeah.
And then from that story, you're gonna bring into something, and then you can talk about, oh, do you remember that story? But perhaps you don't even need to mention that because it's magic. Storytelling, that's why, is magic.
Cue tears.
So
It is magic.
you don't have to explain much about it.
No.
And I remember in one of the occasions in Brazil, I have this gorgeous student. She was very, she's amazing. She's a woman now. And she used to challenge me a lot. Storytelling is boring, and she used to do all the noises, and then 3 minutes after, she was with mouth open, jaw down, and
She
just
loved
like
it. She loved it.
like dreaming it, because she needed that. She was refusing, very conflictive, and then I remember I finished a story one day, which was in September. Usually it rains a lot, lots of wind, and so we're talking about elements that will link into those seasonal aspects. And she came to me as soon as the candle lit off. I have 5 questions for you. And she have why you didn't told that word and this and this and this and that. And I said, well, can you keep those 5 questions inside your pocket, and in 5 days, if I haven't answered those questions, we can talk about it. I didn't give the answer to her, because she was very if I give the answer to her, the next day she wouldn't give attention to me.
So then would you entertain that again in the next story to give a little bit more?
And and then she stopped asking. So because she probably, I don't even know, but that's the mystery, and that's why it's the magic of the storytelling. It's the art of the storytelling.
Art of it, yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm just going to refer here because I just want to make sure that I've covered off the things. One thing I've had here, you've brought up magic. What has been one of your most magical? You've told us a little thing about that little girl now, but in your time of storytelling, what's one of the most magical moments that you've had, be it like a story you've told, or a group setting, or the look of a child's face when you were telling the story, or the conversation after? What's something that really just is memorable for you in terms of your storytelling time?
When I read your question first a few days ago, and then I was just thinking like what it can be, and I thought about again of this circle time, when we are all one in a circle around the candlelight or around the bonfire. There is already speak to the whole experience is there. Yeah. But also, as you asked me now, for me is that I have to prepare myself before I tell this story. So I have to really go and see all the archetypes of that, what that story brings. If this story talks about the billy goat, so I'm gonna maybe perhaps search a little bit more about, and it's gonna to bring even more elements for me.
Yeah.
If the story has to be in my heart, and then that it's definitely is going to be memorable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the circle when we bring it all and we can see the children's faces and expressions, and sometimes it brings up all the challenging behaviors as well
For the children.
Yeah. Yes. And sometimes you forget the story.
Yeah.
It happened. Sometimes you are in a way of all that energy in the room, and suddenly came as a blank. And then you have to kind of like, oh.
I think that's really special though, what you've said, that it's about the group, but even you as the storyteller, yourself as a storyteller, gain so much from it, because you do, like, I know when I'm writing my stories, the meaning, the depth behind it, there is so much that comes to it, and I love seeing the children enjoying it, but I enjoy it so much. I've learned so much creating that story, or learning the depth of different things, even in thinking of the characters or the little goat or what you're going to do. There's so much intention. I think there's so much intention in there.
And what do you, and sometimes like that Susan Perrow is one of the most amazing storytellers in Australia. And I remember reading books in Brazil, the books that she read. She's in Byron Bay, and I remember, oh my God, like I want to meet her, and finally I did.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did a workshop with her, and she actually writes books about therapeutic stories. We can put into your link, therapeutic stories for challenge behaviors, which you can be in your own children, or can be in your classroom. So she creates these stories for a specific biography needs, and like transitions in life. If a pet die in the family, you want to bring a story about it.
So powerful.
If is your birthday stories are the best.
I love it. Yeah.
If you're moving houses, you can create a story, that's why I don't use much fairy tales. I love fairy tales, and I read them to myself. I love them, and I'm now around 9 years old. You can start, 7, 8, 9 years old, you can start to bring more fairy tales, which has a lot of moral aspects. And some people's like, oh, but it is kind of discriminative, and that's because it has the black and has the white, and the black witch, and it's just like, this is just an archetype, and
I think it evokes questions as well, that it could. I think the most beautiful thing about a story is that then the conversations that it leads to afterwards, because if the child does have questions about certain things, it's really just initiate a conversation or a question, or some follow through with it afterwards, which is great. There's no right or wrong to it.
But I think again, storytelling, when like you observing the natural environment around you.
Yeah, what's happening,
what the moon faces, where's the sun is rising in summer, in winter, what kind of plants you have around you, what animals visit your garden, all the places around where you live, and that's
what are you eating?
Yeah, exactly. What are fruits are?
Yeah, what food's in season?
Yeah,
what are you doing in the farm?
All these aspects is already a storytelling. So you can do gardening with your child, and you have to say, you can say, there was once a family. They were wanting to have a veggie garden.
Don't give away my next tale. It's my next tale.
And then you maybe you can have a seeds on the end of that story.
That is my story.
You know, and and this is how it's actually
It's beautiful.
started.
This is the head with the story, the heart once they start to understand it and feel it, and then the hand is the follow through.
Yeah, in yesterday, I think every day I have something that makes, that was the highlight of my story. Like yesterday I was reading a story to my daughter, and the end of the story was, and then the person heard this story with another 100 people, and one of these 100 people told another 100 people, and you are one of the 100 people I told this story. And my daughter turns up to me, really?
Oh, it's so cute. And she's 9 too.
And I said, and can you imagine now you are able to tell this story to your friends one day?
To another 100 people?
And then she was like, yeah. Because she's all about numbers now. And so she loved the aspect that like, you know.
It's the exponential expansion.
And sharing. So you can create what is the meaning of every story. And if you're repeating the story, you can have that. It's kind of a spell. You can have your own spell. A story, you know, rather will be sour, rather will be sweet. And some children just look at you as like, what? What's she saying? But and then I say that every time I tell you a story, and they will be repeating that.
I know, it's sweet. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
If there's one last thing you'd like to share with people about storytelling for them to take away, what do you think that it would be?
Dream about them.
Dream about the stories.
Yeah, and write down your ideas, and I think like what elements. So, you know, first thing, head, heart, and hands, which is probably the skeleton of a story. Which it could be the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Yeah.
But also, I think those aspects, it really brings life into the tale. You have to be mindful of age-appropriate stories. Young children, if you repeat a 5-line verse and change the character, let's say, the yellow cat, you know, likes to drink milk. And does the hen likes to drink milk? Does the horsey likes to drink milk? And that's already a story for a 1-year-old.
Yeah, it can be really simple.
And then it was like, and then the cat went to talk to the hen. I need some milk. Then the hen said, I never saw a cat drinking milk in my life. So you can slowly add to that 1-year-old, 2-year-old, because they only need that 3-minute attention from you. For the 5-year-old, you can bring the sounds into that. Perhaps you can bring the natural materials.
Yeah.
And then perhaps one day you can have a yellow cat in your lap. You know, so you can have a time and importance of creating and making something that will be part of your story. For the older children, you can have those elements like the candle and the snuffer and the instrument kept into a box, and that child will be responsible to bring out of the cupboard. And those things you're only going to use for storytelling. So that makes the treasure that keeps treasure. It like, no, you're not playing with that. Remember, it's just for the story.
It's beautiful.
Keep that magic, but you need to believe in that story. If you don't believe in that story, then you're not going to reach it.
Yeah, the children.
You're not going to make the bridge towards the hearts. So you need to believe in that story, first of all.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm going to stop there because I think we're coming up near an hour now.
Yeah.
That's a lot. But I thank you so much.
Thank you again.
I really enjoyed that. the video seems to be working, which is a good thing. So I will look over this video and find the key points and get some links from Ali with some of the things that she's spoken about today, just to give some more context so people can see what you're talking about there as well, especially with some of the people you were talking about, because I think that's really interesting. Is Susan Perro?
Yeah.
For an Australian one, I think that's interesting considering she's here obviously in Australia.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for watching this evening and for writing a few little comments down there. I'm going to send this back in a replay, which is brilliant. Thank you, Chantal. That's lovely, darling. And I will send this all to you so that you can refer to it, which is great. But thank you, Ali. And as well on Ali's thing, she's creating a new website at the moment for all the things that she's doing up here and online. At the moment, that's still in fruition. It's bubbling. So still stay connected with Ali, mainly on Instagram. That's the best space to connect with Ali at the moment. That's where you're showcasing your stuff, and you can get in contact with Ali there, which would be brilliant. But thank you so much, and we will see you in September with another interview, which won't be in person because the person is going to be from New Zealand. We've got Anya Bell, who is a professional childcare chef and a health coach in New Zealand, and she's amazing. And so we're going to be talking with Anya in September. So that's someone sort of more involved in the day-to-day hands-on with food with children, which is very excited. She's brilliant, Anya. But thank you, Ali, for giving us your love and your magic around storytelling because it's so inspiring and I just adore it. So thank you so much. And thank you so much for watching this evening. I hope you're all well, and we'll see you. Oh, that's a good high five there, Cheryl. I love it. I will stop there now. Thank you so much and have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.